So we've talked about trade and exchange, and we talked about transaction costs. Um, and so, all right, seems simple enough, but why is it that trade and exchange and all the wealth creation we've talked about takes place in some parts of the world, but not other parts of the world, right? Why is there so much wealth in some places and so much poverty in other places, right? And now, there's a lot of different explanations for that, but one of the key factors that helps explain why this takes place in some parts of the world and not others is the existence of property rights. And so that's why we have this statement here, right? People won't engage in trade or exchange or find ways to make themselves better off if there are no property rights, okay? That is, and this kind of makes sense at a fundamental level, right? So if I'm going to work and try to accrue wealth, and if my wealth is stolen all the time, then what's the point, right? And so this is why property rights are really important. So what are property rights? Well, here's our textbook definition, right? So property rights, we call them bundles. So it's a bundle of rights to use, control, and obtain the benefits from a good or a resource, okay? So a lot of times we use the term bundle here because a lot of times these rights aren't exclusive. Rights and freedoms necessarily place limitations on things. That's the nature of it, right? So, and that's why a lot of times we use the term bundle. So, for example, if I'm renting an apartment, right, I have the right to use that place, right? But I probably don't have the right to remodel it or knock out a wall because I think it would look better, right? So, the bundle of rights I have when I rent a place is to use it, to have friends over, to live there, to, rent it, right? But I don't have the right to modify the place, okay? So now let's be more specific and talk about private property rights, okay? So private property rights, we're talking about individuals or companies, right? So I own my house and I own the land that it is on, so those are my private property rights, right? I own that, it's mine, okay? Or if a company owns a building and the land that it's on, right, that's private property rights, okay? So these are rights or bundle of rights that belong to an individual or a company, right? All right, so what do these property rights entail? Well, first, I can exclude others, right? So the key aspect of property rights is that I can say it's mine. You can't touch it. Go away, right? So the ability to exclude others, right? Now sometimes people would say, wow, that's really selfish. You're like, maybe. But this is a key aspect of property rights, and it's what makes property rights so conducive to wealth creation, right? Because it's mine, I'm generally going to be more likely to take care of it, right? And we'll get to some of those aspects in a little bit. But the ability to exclude others, the ability to say, look, you can't use this, this is mine. You can only use it if you have my permission, right? That's what we mean by you can exclude others, okay? The second aspect is that private property rights only work if you have a legal system to protect those rights and to exclude others, right? If your police is corrupt and your legal system is terrible, then effectively you don't have private property rights, right? So this is why pretty much every country in the world in their constitution guarantees private property rights, right? But in reality, if there's corruption and a poor legal system, you can have property rights written in your constitution, but in reality you still don't have them, right? So you need a legal system that is not corrupt, a police force that is not corrupt, that fairly enforces these rights, okay? And lastly, because it's mine and because I can exclude others and because I can count on legal protection, I have the right to sell it, exchange it, rent it, to basically gain the kind of benefits of using these particular rights, okay? So in a little bit, we'll get into more of the details as to why private property rights is really helpful for wealth creation. But for now, let's take a look at some maps to talk about this aspect of property rights and wealth creation. Okay. All right. So I've got a statement here that says the existence of strong private property rights is important for economic growth. Okay. So what do I mean by this? Well, we'll get to the kind of incentive aspects of why this is the case in a minute. What I thought I would do, we'll take a look at two different kind of pictures of the world. Okay, the first here, this is the whole world, and we've got a color-coded map here. Okay, and this is actually using what's called the economic freedom of the world index. So this is actually put together by a Canadian think tank called the Fraser Institute. There's a bunch of different indices these days. There's some that look at democracy, some that look at economic freedom. There's the one that looks at corruption. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. There's a bunch of measures out there now that kind of look at some of these aspects of different countries. Now this one, Economic Freedom of the World Index, one of the first components is property rights. That is, do individuals have property rights, and does the legal system enforce and protect those rights? Okay, and so this map, this kind of globe, this picture of the world that is color-coded is not color-coded based on money. It's color-coded based on these measures of property rights and other aspects of economic institutions. Okay. And so the blue tends to indicate countries that have strong property rights. We call them mostly free. That is, people are more free in these countries. Green is kind of, not bad, not good. Yellow is getting worse. Orange is and red is really bad. Red means people in these countries, there's a lot of corruption. Legal system is terrible. There's just not strong private property rights, right? And so what do we see, right? The countries that are wealthy are the countries that are blue, right? Canada, U.S., all of Western Europe, right? Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Hong Kong. You see Hong Kong right here. We've got a little blowout thing that's next to China. We've got Taiwan right here. We've got Singapore right down here. That's where we've got this little blow-up thing here. You can see the little blue dot right there. That is Singapore. And we got Chile over here, right, in South America. Panama here, right there in the middle, right? These are all places that have pretty good private property rights and legal systems to enforce those rights, right? So what are the countries in red that have terrible private property rights? Well, it's Russia, right? It's parts of Africa, right? It's right up here, Venezuela, these parts here in South America, Nicaragua. Is not very good property rights, right? China is also not that great. China is very orange, right? Parts of the Middle East as well. And so this kind of really reinforces this notion that private property rights are really important for economic growth and wealth creation, right? And we can see that when we look around the world, okay? All right, so I encourage you, if you want, go online, go to the Economic Freedom of the World Index. It's the Fraser Institute, and they have a little interactive map that can take you to different places. And so if you want to look further at some of these countries, it's kind of a neat thing to do, okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, the next slide is basically a picture taken from space at night by a satellite. All right, so the question is, who can identify these two countries? Now, usually I have a fair number of students who can figure this out. This is the Korean Peninsula. So up here, this is North Korea. Down here, this is South Korea. Again, this is at night taken from a satellite. So what are we looking at? We're looking at city lights. Right? North Korea is dark, right? There's no economic activity. The only city lights are right here. And what do you think that is? That is Pyongyang. That is the capital. It is Kim Jong-un's palace. Whereas the rest of North Korea is dark, right? There's no mass electrification, right? But South Korea, there's lights everywhere, right? It looks like a Christmas tree, right? And so what's the difference? Well, North Korea, no private property rights. Okay. Now, also, North Korea is communist, South Korea is a market economy. There's other differences here, but one of the fundamental differences is that North Korea has no private property rights. South Korea has private property rights. Right? But on many other things, they're the same. Same culture, same people, right? The demilitarized zone is right here, right? An arbitrary border that split the same culture, same people, same language, same food, same everything in half. I mean, families, even families were cut in half. Some families were on the north side, some families on the south side. The thing that's different are the economic institutions. Democracy, property rights, market economy, and up north you have no democracy, no property rights, and a communist type system. Okay, so these pictures kind of tell us what we or show us what we've talked about, and that is that private property rights are really a fundamental aspect of wealth creation, right? So this helps us explain why, when we look around the world, countries that don't have good private property rights or a legal system to enforce those rights generally have a lot of poverty, right? It's hard to accrue wealth if your stuff is stolen, right? And this is why you see people in poor countries having stuff that they largely can carry with them, right? Because that's the only way they can protect it. Or in poor countries, when you see the really wealthy, what do you see? They have to guard their wealth, right? They have houses with compounds and walls and razor wire and guards with shotguns, right? I've been to many of these countries, and it's a little weird, right? So when I was in El Salvador, this place I stayed, I mean, just guards at the front with sawed-off shotguns. I was like, what is going on, right? The wall had glass sticking up to keep people from climbing over, right? This is common in Johannesburg and South Africa. It's common in a lot of these places where property rights are not very secure, and the legal system can't be relied upon to enforce those rights. So if you have wealth, you have to do it yourself. And so you just see these huge disparities of the really poor having nothing, the really wealthy wasting a bunch of money to protect the stuff they have. And economically, that's not terribly productive. Okay, so that kind of goes through kind of the or allows us to see the importance of private property rights. And now what we'll jump to next is, why is it the case? Why are the incentives there that allow property rights to be really helpful in terms of economic growth and prosperity?